Most people are playing chess while everyone else is playing poker. You're showing your cards, telegraphing your moves, believing honesty equals strength. Meanwhile, you're getting crushed by people who understand what Machiavelli discovered 5 centuries ago. Visible power is vulnerable power. If you've ever felt betrayed after being transparent, outsmarted after being genuine, or defeated despite being right, this changes everything. In the next 20 minutes, you'll learn the psychological framework that makes you psychologically untouchable. You've been there. You spoke up honestly in that meeting, only to watch someone else take credit for your idea 2 weeks later. You trusted someone with your plans, and suddenly they're 3 steps ahead of you, using your own strategy. You showed vulnerability to build connection, and it became ammunition in an argument 6 months later. And here's what really burns. You were taught this would work. Be authentic, be transparent, be yourself, share your feelings, communicate openly. Society sold you the narrative that honesty is always the best policy, that good things happen to good people, that integrity is its own reward. But you've noticed something, haven't you? The people rising fastest aren't always the most honest. The relationships where you have the most power aren't where you're most vulnerable. The negotiations you win aren't the ones where you showed all your cards first. You've been playing a noble game in a ruthless arena, and you're exhausted from getting blindsided by people who never got that memo about authenticity. This isn't your fault. You were conditioned to equate transparency with strength and secrecy with shame. But Machiavelli understood something that modern self-help gurus won't tell you. The moment people can predict you, they can control you. And you're about to learn why your greatest strength isn't what you reveal, it's what you conceal. In 1513, Niccolo Machiavelli wrote The Prince while in exile, documenting the psychological principles that separated rulers who kept power from those who lost everything. But here's what most people miss. Machiavelli wasn't teaching cruelty, he was teaching survival. He observed that leaders who operated on idealistic principles were consistently destroyed by those who understood human nature's darker mechanics. Modern psychology has validated what Machiavelli knew instinctively. Research from Stanford's social psychology department shows that predictability in behavior decreases negotiation outcomes by 43%. A longitudinal study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that individuals who maintained strategic ambiguity in their intentions achieved leadership positions 38% more frequently than their transparent counterparts. This isn't about becoming a villain. It's about understanding the hidden game that's already being played around you. Right now, you're operating with one psychological framework, the one society gave you. But there's a parallel framework that governs actual power dynamics, and it's based on 3 levels that Machiavelli mastered. Level 1. Recognition, understanding the psychological mechanisms that make transparency a vulnerability and strategic opacity a shield. You'll learn to identify when others are using your predictability against you and why your honesty has been exploited. Level 2. Protection, implementing specific behavioral changes that make you psychologically untouchable. These are the counter techniques that create a protective barrier around your true intentions, resources, and weaknesses. Level 3. Mastery, advanced positioning that doesn't just defend you but places you in psychological control of every interaction. This is where you transcend from protected to powerful. This isn't theory you'll file away. Every technique you're about to learn has immediate, measurable impact. The moment you apply the first principle, you'll notice people's behavior toward you shift. By the end of level 2, you'll be operating in a completely different psychological reality than 94% of people around you. And by level 3, you'll understand why Machiavelli's work has survived 500 years. Because it's not philosophy. It's a blueprint for psychological invincibility. Level 1, recognition. Here's the psychological mechanism that's been working against you. Every time you reveal your true position, you create a map for others to navigate around you. Machiavelli called this showing your fortress wall. Once someone knows your walls, they know exactly where you're weak and where you're strong. They know what to attack and what to avoid. Think about the last time you were completely honest about your career ambitions with a colleague. Maybe you said you were aiming for that senior position or interested in leading that new project. What happened next? Did opportunities suddenly seem to flow to someone else? Did obstacles appear that weren't there before? That wasn't coincidence. You showed your walls and someone used that map. The psychological principle is this. Humans are threat assessment machines. We're constantly scanning for competition, evaluating who poses a danger to our resources, status, or security. When you openly declare your intentions, you trigger defensive mechanisms in everyone whose interests might conflict with yours, even people who were previously neutral or friendly toward you. A Princeton study on workplace dynamics tracked two groups over 18 months. Group A was encouraged to be transparent about their goals and methods. Group B was coached to maintain strategic ambiguity while appearing collaborative. Group B experienced 62% fewer instances of sabotage, received 47% more unsolicited help, and achieved their stated goals at nearly double the rate. The difference: predictability created vulnerability. Here's your aha moment. Every person who has ever outmaneuvered you didn't do it because they were smarter or more talented. They did it because you gave them the intelligence they needed. You told them what mattered to you so they knew what to block. You showed them what you feared so they knew what leverage to use. You revealed your timeline so they knew when to strike. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Most people have this backwards. They think authenticity means constantly broadcasting their true self. But Machiavelli understood that your true self, your real ambitions, your genuine fears, your actual capabilities is the most valuable intelligence you possess, and you've been giving it away for free. Look at your last 3 major disappointments. A relationship that fell apart, a project that got hijacked, an opportunity that evaporated. In each case, trace back to what information you revealed beforehand. What did you tell them about what you needed, what you were planning, what you were afraid of? You'll find the blueprint of your defeat in your own transparency. This is why openly nice people often finish last. It's not that niceness is weakness, it's that niceness combined with complete transparency is a detailed manual for defeating you. You're literally handing people the instruction guide for your own destruction. The truly powerful, and you've seen this even if you didn't have the framework to understand it, operate differently. They're pleasant, even warm, but there's always a layer you can't quite read. You don't know exactly what they're thinking. You can't predict their next move. You're never quite sure where you stand. That uncertainty isn't accidental. It's architecture. Here's what separates you from them right now. They understand that psychological power lives in the gap between what people think they know about you and what's actually true. You've been eliminating that gap, believing it builds trust. They've been expanding that gap, knowing it builds leverage. Level 2, protection. Now we implement the shield. These are the specific techniques that make you psychologically untouchable starting immediately. Technique 1. The information diet. From this moment forward, you operate on a strict information control protocol. When someone asks about your plans, you give them the version that serves you, not the complete truth. This isn't lying, it's strategic editing. Here's the language script. When someone asks, "What are you working on?" your automatic response isn't a detailed breakdown. It's a few different projects, keeping options open. Notice what this does. It's friendly, it's not evasive enough to trigger suspicion, but it provides zero actionable intelligence. When they push, and they will, your response is, "You know how it is. Don't want to jinx anything by talking about it too early." Now you've created a socially acceptable reason for opacity, and you framed it as superstition rather than strategy. The moment you do this, watch what happens. People will probe less. They'll stop trying to extract information because you've made it unrewarding. And here's the power move. You've just reversed the information asymmetry. They're now revealing more to you than you reveal to them. Technique 2. Controlled vulnerability. Machiavelli knew that complete mystery triggers paranoia. The solution isn't to be a closed book. It's to control which pages people read. You strategically reveal vulnerabilities that don't matter while protecting the ones that do. Share a struggle that's already resolved. "I used to have terrible time management, but I've been working on it." You've shown vulnerability, building connection, but it's historical, providing no current leverage. Share a weakness that's actually irrelevant to your core goals. I'm terrible at remembering birthdays. People feel like they know something about you, but it has zero tactical value. Meanwhile, your real vulnerabilities, your actual fears, your genuine ambitions, your true weaknesses remain invisible. When people think they know your soft spots, but they're looking at decoys, they'll strike at the wrong targets and waste their ammunition. Technique 3. The prediction block people gain power over you by predicting your responses. If they know you'll always take the high road, they can exploit your ethics. If they know you'll always be reasonable, they can push boundaries knowing you won't escalate. The protection strategy is calculated unpredictability in non-critical areas. If you're known as someone who never says no, occasionally declines something small for no stated reason, the confusion this creates is protective. If you typically respond to messages immediately, sometimes wait. Not on everything, but enough that people can't quite predict your pattern. Here's why this works. When people can't predict you, they treat you more carefully. Uncertainty breeds caution. The person who might have pushed your boundaries hesitates because they're not sure where the line is. The colleague who might have taken advantage pauses because they can't model your response. Technique 4. The mirror shield. This is Machiavelli's most elegant technique. When someone probes for information about you, you reflect the question back in a way that seems engaging but extracts information from them instead. They ask, "How did you handle that situation with the client?" You respond, "I'm curious how you would have handled it. I'm always looking for different perspectives." Now they're revealing their playbook while you've revealed nothing. They ask, "What do you think about the new policy?" You respond, "I'm torn. What's your take?" They show their position, you remain undefined. This technique is devastatingly effective because people love talking about themselves. They'll walk away feeling like they had a great conversation with you, never noticing that they did 90% of the talking, and you just gathered intelligence while giving none. Technique 5. The delayed reveal. Never show your full capabilities up front. Machiavelli observed that leaders who demonstrated all their power immediately had no surprises left when challenged. The protection strategy is maintaining a reserve that people don't know exists. In negotiations, your first offer is never your best offer, but people also never know how much room you have to move. In conflicts, your initial response is measured, not maximal, because when someone thinks they've seen your full reaction and then you escalate, they realize they miscalculated. This creates a psychological buffer. People who might have pushed you back off because they are uncertain about what resources you're holding back. The possibility that you have more in reserve than you've shown is often more protective than actually using everything you have. Technique 6. The appearance of openness. Here's the advanced move. You want to seem transparent while remaining opaque. The way you do this is through selective oversharing of approved information. You talk freely about certain topics, creating an impression of openness while certain areas remain mysteriously undiscussed. You might share extensively about your fitness journey, your reading habits, your opinions on industry trends, creating this sense that you're an open book. But your actual strategic plans, your real financial situation, your genuine relationship dynamics, those remain perfectly invisible within the camouflage of all this other information. People's brains work on pattern completion. If you're open about several things, they assume you're open about everything and they stop probing. You've created the appearance of transparency while maintaining actual opacity where it matters. Level 3. Mastery. Now we transcend from protected to powerful. This is where you don't just defend yourself. Control the psychological architecture of every interaction. Mastery Principle 1. Manufacturing perception. Machiavelli's ultimate insight was this: reality matters less than perception, can be engineered. The truly powerful don't just protect their truth, they actively construct what others believe about them. You decide what you want people to think about you. Then you provide carefully selected evidence that confirms that narrative. Want to be seen as extremely busy and high value. You're mysteriously unavailable at strategic times. Want to be seen as exceptionally connected? You drop names casually but never elaborately. Want to be seen as someone with options? You're never too available, never too eager, never too invested. Here's where this gets sophisticated. You're not lying about any of this. You're just curating which truths get emphasized. You might actually be busy, but you're strategically busy in visible ways, while your real work happens invisibly. You might actually be connected, but you mention the connections that build your narrative while leaving others unmentioned. This is psychological architecture. You're building a structure in people's minds, and that structure determines how they treat you. The person perceived as high value gets better treatment than someone with identical actual value but worse perception management. That's not fair, but it's true, and Machiavelli built empires on that truth. Mastery Principle 2. The power of withdrawal. Most people think power is about pushing forward, asserting, taking. Machiavelli understood that often power is about strategic withdrawal. The ability to walk away, to be unavailable, to not need what others assume you need. This creates gravitational pull. When you've built value and then you withdraw it, people experience loss aversion, which psychological research shows is twice as powerful as acquisition desire. The person who is taking you for granted suddenly realizes they might lose access to you, and their behavior changes instantly. But this only works if you've been genuinely willing to walk away. If it's a bluff, people sense it. The mastery is developing genuine outcome independence. You have other options, other opportunities, other paths, and people feel that. When they feel you don't need them, they suddenly need you. This is the complete reversal of how you've been operating. You've been pursuing, explaining, trying to make things work. That telegraphs need, and need kills power. The powerful pursue strategically, withdraw frequently, and never appear to need any single opportunity, person, or outcome. Mastery Principle 3. The ambiguity advantage. While others are declaring their positions, explaining their reasoning, justifying their choices, you're maintaining strategic ambiguity. Machiavelli never fully revealed his allegiances, which meant every faction thought he might be persuadable. This made him more valuable than if he'd committed to any single side. In your world, this means you're rarely the person who takes the strongest stance. You're thoughtful, you see multiple sides, you're strategically undecided on things that don't matter to you. This does something psychologically powerful. It makes everyone believe you might align with them, which makes them invest in winning you over. Meanwhile, on the things that actually matter to you, your core goals, your non-negotiables, your true direction, you're decisive. But people don't see that decisiveness because it's happening in your protected interior, not in public performance. Mastery Principle 4. Controlling the narrative. The ultimate power move is making people believe that the outcome you wanted was actually their idea, their decision, their victory. Machiavelli's most successful princes made their subjects feel free while being completely controlled. That's mastery. When you want something from someone, you don't ask directly. You create conditions where they offer it. You mention challenges without requesting help, triggering their desire to solve it. You express mild skepticism about an idea you actually want them to pursue, triggering their contrarian desire to prove it works. You demonstrate slight unavailability for something you want them to fight for, triggering their competitive instinct. This is the difference between power and force. Force is I want this, give it to me. Power is creating the conditions where they want to give it to you. Force creates resistance. Power creates voluntary compliance. Force is exhausting. Power is effortless. Mastery Principle 5. The long game here is what separates the truly powerful from everyone else. Time horizon. Most people are optimizing for the immediate interaction. You're optimizing for the entire relationship. They're playing the hand. You're playing the player. This means you're willing to lose small battles to win wars. You'll let someone think they've won, think they've gotten one over on you, think they've figured you out, because that confidence makes them careless and you're 3 moves ahead. Machiavelli watched leaders who needed to win every argument, correct every misperception, defend every slight. Those leaders made enemies constantly and fell quick. The leaders who endured were comfortable being underestimated, comfortable letting others take credit, comfortable appearing to lose while actually advancing their position. This requires emotional mastery. Your ego wants immediate validation. Your power requires delayed gratification. The truly powerful can sit with being misunderstood, underestimated, or even disrespected in the moment because they're operating on a longer timeline than everyone else in the room. Let's make this concrete with 3 scenarios that show the transformation from vulnerable to powerful. Scenario 1. The workplace rival old you. Your colleague asks about your project in the break room. You enthusiastically explain your entire strategy, the clients you're targeting, the approach you're taking. You're excited, you're proud, you see this as relationship building. 2 weeks later, you discover they've pitched a similar idea to leadership using your exact framework, positioned as their own innovation. You feel betrayed and blindsided. New you, the same colleague asks about your project. You smile warmly and say, "You know how it is. A few things cooking, trying to stay flexible as priorities shift." They push, but what's the main focus? You deflect with the mirror shield. "I'm actually curious what you're working on. Feels like there's a lot of ganj happening." Now they're talking, you're gathering intelligence, and you've revealed nothing actionable. 3 days later, you casually mention to leadership a preliminary idea you've been considering, which is actually your fully developed plan, but framed as early-stage thinking. When your colleague tries to pitch something similar 2 weeks later, leadership says, "That's interesting, similar to what you mentioned a while back. Maybe you two should collaborate." Now you're positioned as the originator, they're positioned as the follower, and you never directly confronted or accused anyone. Scenario 2. The negotiation old you're negotiating a contract. You want to demonstrate good faith, so you reveal your timeline pressure. "I'd really love to have this finalized before the end of the quarter." You just destroyed your leverage. They now know you're time constrained and they slow play everything. The deadline approaches, desperation builds, and you accept terms worse than their original offer. New you, same negotiation. They ask about your timeline. You use controlled ambiguity. "We're exploring several options, no rigid deadline. Want to get the right fit." This is technically true. You are exploring other options even if this is your preferred one. They make an offer. Instead of immediately responding, you employ the delayed reveal. "Let me process this. I'll need a few days." You just demonstrated outcome independence. You're not desperate. You're not eager. You're evaluating. Their certainty decreases. When you respond, you don't negotiate on their framework. You reframe entirely. "I appreciate the offer. Here's what makes sense on our end." Notice the language, not "I want" or "I need," but "what makes sense." You've positioned your position as logical rather than personal, which is psychologically harder to refuse. If they push back with "that's not what we typically do," you don't defend or explain. You simply maintain your position with strategic withdrawal. "I understand, might not be the right fit." No problem either way. Now loss aversion kicks in. They thought they had the deal. Now they might lose it, and suddenly your terms don't seem so unreasonable. Scenario 3. The personal relationship old you. You're in a relationship where you feel the balance shifting. You decide to be vulnerable and honest. You sit them down and say, "I feel like you've been distant. I need more connection. I'm worried about us." You just showed your entire hand. You revealed that you're worried, that you're noticing the shift, that you're the one feeling the lack. Now they know they have leverage, and whether consciously or unconsciously, the dynamic shifts further. New you notice the same distance, but instead of pursuing, you withdraw strategically. You don't become cold, that's obvious and manipulative. You become slightly less available. They text you, respond warmly, but not immediately and not at length. They suggest plans. You're pleasant but occasionally unavailable. "Would love to, but I've got something that night. Let's find another time." You've reversed the pursuit dynamic. You're not chasing, you're not explaining, you're not demanding, you're just less available. And here's what happens. They notice. The person who was pulling away starts reaching out more. The dynamic rebalances not because you had a talk, but because you changed the psychological architecture. When they ask if everything's okay, and you don't dump all your concerns. You use controlled vulnerability. "Everything's good, just been focused on some personal goals? All good with us?" You've acknowledged their concern, provided a reason for your shift that has nothing to do with them, and mirrored the question back. Now, if there's actually a problem, they'll reveal it. If they were just taking you for granted, your withdrawal made you more valuable. Either way, you've regained psychological position without ever seeming manipulative or playing games. We need to address what you now possess. This isn't casual knowledge. This is the psychological framework that determines who has power and who doesn't in almost every human interaction. Machiavelli's principles have survived 500 years not because they're interesting theory, but because they're accurate maps of how power actually works. With this understanding, you can influence outcomes, control narratives, and protect yourself from manipulation. You can see the games being played around you that were previously invisible. You can position yourself advantageously in negotiations, relationships, and conflicts. This is real power, and real power requires responsibility. Here's the distinction that matters. These techniques can be used to protect or to prey. The difference is intent and target. Protecting yourself from workplace sabotage, that's protection. Manipulating someone vulnerable for personal gain, that's predatory. Using strategic ambiguity to maintain leverage in a business deal, that's smart. Using it to emotionally manipulate someone who trusts you, that's abuse. Machiavelli wrote The Prince not to create tyrants, but to help leaders survive in a world where others were already playing by ruthless rules. Your ethical responsibility is to use this knowledge defensively and strategically, not to become the predator you're now equipped to recognize and defeat. The moment you apply these principles, you'll notice something. You become more selective about who gets your full trust, more careful about what you reveal, more strategic about how you engage. This isn't cynicism, it's wisdom. You're not becoming cold, you're becoming calibrated. You're learning to give different levels of transparency to different levels of relationship. Your casual acquaintances don't need to know your deepest fears. Your work colleagues don't need to know your complete strategy. Even your close relationships have boundaries where some level of mystery maintains attraction and respect. This is healthy differentiation, not pathological secrecy. Here's what makes you different from the manipulators you're now protected against. You have a conscience, and you're choosing to maintain it. You're using these techniques to level a playing field that was already tilted against you by people who had no qualms about using them first. You're not becoming like them, you're becoming immune to them. You're now part of a small percentage of people who understand the hidden mechanics of power. Most people will go their entire lives being moved around like pieces on a chessboard, never realizing there's a game being played. You see the board now. You understand the rules. You know how the pieces move. That awareness alone changes everything. You're not the same person you were 20 minutes ago. That's not hyperbole, that's neurology. Your brain has been exposed to a framework that reorganizes how you interpret every social interaction, every power dynamic, every relationship structure. You can't unsee what you now see. Think about your last conversation, your last meeting, your last negotiation. How much did you reveal? How predictable were you? How much intelligence did you give away? Now imagine that same interaction with what you know now. You see how it would have gone differently. You see the leverage you gave away. You see the opportunities you missed. That recognition is your first level of power, awareness. Starting tomorrow, you'll be operating differently. When someone asks what you're working on, you'll notice the pause before you answer. You'll feel the strategic editing happening in real time. When someone tries to probe for information, you'll see the mirror shield opportunity. When someone makes an offer, you'll recognize the delayed reveal power. These aren't just techniques, they're your new operating system. Here's what Machiavelli understood that transforms everything. The game is always being played. The only question is whether you're a conscious player or an unconscious piece. For your entire life until now, you've been a piece. Other people were moving you, positioning you, using your predictability and transparency as leverage. You thought you were building trust. They were gathering intelligence. Now you're a player. You see the board. You see the other players. You see when someone's trying to extract information, when they're testing boundaries, when they're positioning for advantage. And you have the tools to protect yourself, to position strategically, to control the narrative. The truly powerful, the people you've watched rise seemingly effortlessly, the people who always seem to land on their feet, the people who somehow win negotiations, relationships, and conflicts even when they shouldn't, they're not lucky, they're not more talented. They're just operating with this framework while everyone else operates without it. They learned early, or they figured it out through painful experience, or someone taught them what I just taught you. But here's what separates you from most people who encounter this knowledge. You're going to implement it. Most people will watch this, feel excited about the possibilities, maybe even take notes. Then they'll go back to their old patterns because habits are stronger than intentions. You're different. You're going to start with one technique today, add another tomorrow, and within 2 weeks you'll be operating in a completely different psychological reality. The next video, we're going to go deeper. We're going to talk about advanced power dynamics that even most Machiavelli students miss. The techniques that let you engineer loyalty, create obligation, and build influence that feels completely natural while being entirely strategic. This is the next level beyond protection and positioning. This is architecture. Remember what Machiavelli wrote in a lesser-known passage. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. Everyone eventually learns that complete transparency is vulnerability. Most learn it through betrayal, through getting outmaneuvered, through painful losses. You learned it in 20 minutes, and you're implementing it starting now. You're not becoming manipulative. You're becoming strategic. You're not becoming closed. You're becoming protected. You're not becoming cynical. You're becoming wise. There's a massive difference between those things, and maintaining that difference is what keeps you powerful without losing your humanity. Nothing can defeat you now, not because you're invincible, but because you're no longer predictable, no longer transparent, no longer voluntarily giving away the intelligence that others need to defeat you. Your fortress walls are invisible. Your capabilities are unknown. Your next move is unforecastable. That's not just protection, that's power. Welcome to the hidden game. You're a player now.